Hello, everybody. It's November the 8th, 2024. We're moving right along in this year. I want to thank everybody for joining the Constitution call. Tonight is going to be another wowzer. We've got Silver 57 Jim on and Mason. They've had a really busy week this week with Low Tide doing some of the recordings and RJack even jumping in. So I'm going to turn the mic over to RJack and take it away, RJack. Thank you, everybody. RJack, are you on?
Yeah, I had to unmute. I'm sorry.
No
I'm here.
problem. Well, thanks for being here.
Yep. Well, good evening, everyone. I guess probably we should be discussing what happened this week, and maybe Jim and Mason could give us an idea of what they're thinking about what happened. And would one of y'all like to get started and just kind of go over, the events this week? How about you, Mason? Why don't you get started? What do you think? What do you think about everything that happened this week?
Well, I think Trump has finally at least been exposed as the president, even though he's been that all along. He's appointed some people to positions that are obvious that the Patriot community may start taking back some of the positions that have been, I'll just say, vacated or abandoned because of the qualifications of some of the people. It doesn't mean that the status of all these people has been corrected yet, because on its surface, they're still just a bunch of U.S. citizens. And we're going to see how all this stuff begins to unfold. Apparently, the military is either in position, standing ready, or they've already started their roundups. Of course, I'm in a particular place where we don't get a whole lot of news here from mainstream, mainly because we don't listen to it at all, and we don't have to look out and wonder if the military is marching up and down the street arresting people, because this is just a very rural community where it's fairly sparse as far as the number of people that live here. So uh, we're in kind of a situation right now, for those of us who at least know where the system is supposed to go, of seeing the first steps for it actually moving in that direction. And of course, that would be back to sound money, citizenship proper, land titles, um, getting the courts back in a function where it's operating according to our law rather than according to some alien communist manifest. Um, so there's going to be a lot of good stuff that's going to be happening. And just a matter of time now. All Trump's got to do is put his people to work and get us on some kind of a mainstream channel where the whole population is listening to stuff instead of just a few of us. So anyway, that's about where I see at the moment.
Okay. How about you, Jim? Do you have any thoughts that pertain to this week? What happened to? I bet you do.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So, up here in Washington land this last week, the administrative courts for the state of Washington Incorporated had a train wreck. Their entire corporate website structure across the entire state is down. And they don't expect it to come back up for at least a week, maybe 10 days. You can make a phone call to the head office, but you can't get into the portals. You can't get up on this, that, or anything, even at the county level. It's down.
Well, that sounds promising to me.
Yep.
Well, did either one of y'all see the speech that that Trump made, I think it was yesterday or last night, on what he's planning to do in the next, I guess, when he gets started?
It's going to be an interesting affair, I'll tell you that.
Well, it sounded like he's going to be draining the swamp like he promised us.
Well, when you hear that sucking sound, you'll know the swirling action's working.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there was a question that Salty had put into, I don't think she put it in the Constitution room. I think she put it in our workroom. I'm gonna run over there and get it, because it's one that I think people might like to hear. The question that she posted was, why is our president still saying democracy? We are a constitutional republic.
People need to wrap their head around, they have hired help. When I say hired help, I mean we hired someone to mow the lawn. All the way back in 1783, there was 19 delegated service contract stipulated items put before the King of England. And the very first one was, well, can you give us a helping hand now that we're a new nation, new country? We've got these pirates on the eastern seaboard. They're raiding our merchant ships, and they're doing the same thing down in the Caribbean. Hey, Kingy, you have the best navy on the seas. Do you think you could give us a helping hand? Sure, we can do that. Great, contract. The U.S. Navy has always been under the administration of the Crown of England, all the way back to 1783. Well, what other help can you use? Well, we're a new nation of farmers. Tom over here grows cotton. Harry grows peanuts. I grow tobacco. Sometimes we send our agent out to sell the crop, but we don't always sell everything in the barn, so some of it sits there and doesn't do us a lick of good. Do you think, dear King, you can take it into the international market and sell it? Sure, we can do that. Contract. That's where the Department of Commerce comes in. Now, when Lincoln came into office, he brought over a Scottish corporation chartered in Edinburgh and put its paperwork in Delaware. And then Lincoln and his cronies smuggled it into D.C., and then they put Lincoln on the train. Now, because of the Tona Act, the original constitutional 13th Amendment, in our American Constitution, attorneys couldn't even hold the office of dog catcher in our government. However, in the 1830s, Lincoln stood before 3 British Admiralty judges and gave a fealty oath to become an attorney. He wasn't just some simple country bumpkin lawyer. The Lincoln clan were Tories from day one. And when they lost in the Colonial War, they lost big time and they resented it. The same thing goes for the Grant family. Ulysses' real name was Hiram. So when you say Ulysses S. Grant contracted to U.S. Grant, the U.S. corporation granted themselves identity theft and an assumption of contract, because Lincoln laid two American institutions sideways, and it's been MIA for over 160 years. So when they put Lincoln on a train and ran him around the country, that's how they populated the democracy. The true American government is a Republican form of government. And because the public education system was hijacked a long time ago, these are terms and concepts that every last one of you must study. If you don't master these concepts, you might as well as put a bloody ass ring through your nose and go bah, because you'll never master your individual responsibility and sovereignty unless you actually study. So get off your freaking couch, be responsible, and self-govern yourself. That's what the entire American experiment was about. Self-governing. If you want your actual freedom, no one's going to just roll over and give it to you. You must master it, and you have to get over yourself. I don't care if you got a BA, a MA, or a PhD. You've been indoctrinated. And the vast majority don't realize you suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. And if you want to phonically pronounce PhD, take the word elephant and add a D to it. Yes, you've been screwed over. Because your degree has been spoon-fed from you. From the 40s, 50s, and 60s, every last one of us, go to college, get a good education, get a degree, make something of yourself. Be a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist. Well, I got news for you, folks. Every last one of those have strings attached to them. Every last one of those. So an attorney on the Edwardian tables of nobility is one step below a royal knight. A doctor has more clout in the British territorial system than an attorney because they hold a higher rank. Under Title 37, a doctor is an ununiformed military officer. And up until recently, those ununiformed military officers were under the control of the Crown of England. The attorneys are the King of Scotland's civilian militia. And they've been stealing and robbing Americans blind for 160 plus years. So if you really want to get a sense of things, reach into your back pocket, pull your wallet out, grab your driver's license and put it in your left hand. And then say hello to your little friend. And if you think you're a U.S. citizen, raise your left hand high in the air. And if you actually think you're an American, raise your right hand in the air. And then I want all of you to stop, freeze. And I want you to look at yourself. The only other population known to do that with both hands in the air are prisoners of war. War for the mind, war for the heart. So Lincoln could be the president of any corporate entity he chose. McDonald's, Burger King, Dunkin' Donuts. Let's say Dunkin' Donuts decided to be have him for president. Well, you can certainly tell the governmental customers because they walk around with a glazed look on their face. So when our ancestors voted for Lincoln, that is how the democracy got populated. Because that company was a foreign company, you or your ancestors had to make the admission that they were foreign citizens to be allowed to vote in that company. That's how they changed their citizenship behind everyone's back. It is illegal and unlawful to vote in a foreign election. So every last one of you that hear this, pat yourself on the back. You made the admission that you are a foreign subject citizen living on American soil at the whim of the Residency Act of 1790. You are a foreigner living on American soil. And you're not owed one tittle of the Declaration of Independence. Let that sink in. I yield.
Yeah, that's exactly why we feel like we don't really have our rights that we were born with, that God gave us when we were born. Things that like free speech and right to bear arms and lots of things.
If you're actually not a documented, status corrected American, the first 8 amendments to the Bill of Rights don't apply to your sorry carcass. That includes the free speech, the First Amendment. It includes you don't have a right to carry a firearm or an arm because he who is subject has to ask for permission. As an American, you are a co-owner of this gin joint from sea to shining sea, from border to Mexico. The question is, are you actually a documented American of sorts? I, for one, are internationally documented and recognized having that birthright. There are oodles of court cases, and one of them is Wong Kim Arc versus the USA or United States. It's an late 1800s court case. Let me give you a backdrop. Kim's parents came over during the early coolie rush to build the railroad. Little Kim was born in San Francisco. Now think of him as an anchor baby. The day came when Kim's parents retired and decided to return to the old country, and they returned to China. Kim stayed here, enjoyed his life. After a while, he kind of got homesick for mom and dad and decided to go back to China to see how they're doing. Spent some time there, decided to come back. He landed in Hawaii, and the customs officials asked him who he was. Name's Kim. Okay, where are you from? San Francisco. Really? Yeah, that's where I was born. I'm an American. head kind of tips sideways. Really? Let's check this out. Come to find out, mom and dad were never naturalized. This is the kind of switcheroo in law that exists. And that has been utilized against every last soul drawing heir. Vast majority have heard about the straw man, the birth certificate, and this, that, and the other kind of theory. Well, a vast majority of this is no longer theory. It's well documented. Masons put amazing work into the constitutional room. For the vast majority of you who are native born here, upstream there are documents. There's a one-page declaration for reclaiming your birthright. There's 2 witness testimonies. And all you do with that is go get a couple of passport pictures, then find 2 people that are actually willing to say they know you, have them go to a notary, get it notarized, and then we need a scanned copy of your birth certificate, and you're on your way to being recognized as a tried and true, rightful American. That's the core of it. Depending upon whether you're a woman, whether you've been married a couple of times, you've had children, there are some follow-on documentation to tighten up your claim and drag stuff. Every time you go through a name change, you have to capture that name and gain control of it. The Brits have done one hell of a job of skunking our ass. You've been conned, ripped off, flim-flammed, hornswoggled, and boondoggled. Now, what are you going to do about it? I yield.
Well, how about Mason? Do you have anything to add to all of that, about the republic and the democracy?
Well, that Demonocracy, one of the countries that's most well noted for that is Greece. And of course, the Greece people ultimately were totally and completely taken over, just like most of the other people on the planet. But the whole purpose for that democracy principle was, 51% says what the 49% are going to live with, whether they like it or not. And it's always been the backdoor deal of the cabal, the people in power. If they can get control of the youngest of all of us and feed us enough ice cream and lollipops, they could con us into voting for whoever they wanted. And it's the young part of our system that's the problem, mainly because it just hasn't learned yet. And it's not old enough to know the difference between right and wrong until it's gone through enough experiences and gotten what the founders called the age of majority, which was 25 at the time. And so this demonocracy program, that wherever it was perpetrated, really doesn't matter. It pre-exists our country. And that was the nature of it. So what they figured out how to do here was they got rid of the few who were the most intelligent, supposedly, of the bunch, which would be 25 at least. They were American, and the American dictionary, Noah Webster's, is very specific on this term and what it actually means. And for those of you that may want to look it up, it's very plain. You'll understand what it says. It also leads to the word Europe, which if you look that up, you'll understand what it means. So they were a certain class of people, and they were they were progressed into this status of allodium title holders, which is that's the freeholder term. You don't see the word allodium in any of our early documents when it comes to actual titles. But the land patent, which was primary from the English side, and that's where it came from, was an authenticated document by the highest authority in the country. And of course, in England, it would have been the king or one of his appointees. In this country, it became either the president or the governor. But the point that I'm getting at here is that everybody in this system, from this, let's just say the first acts of Congress, 1790, they all became U.S. subjects. And so technically, at this point in time, there isn't a single government employee that isn't already on the wrong side of the fence. And all of these people have been either granted some form of judicial power or administrative power, yielding the seal, of which most of them have been changed because their original founding seals don't match the corporate seals that they've been amended to look slightly different, but they're still representative of what you might consider being the people, even though they're technically not. But as I've said many times, the sovereignty in this country is in the people. It's not in some administrative agent, and it sure as heck doesn't flow from all of those amendments that the Constitution doesn't authorize in the first place. And the 14th Amendment is really, that thing was designed and created to do one thing, which was to swap the citizenship from U.S. or from state to U.S. That's what that thing did. It reversed it. And there's a Supreme Court case on the very topic, U.S. versus Hall, and there's several others. And the Wong Kim Arc case, I'm going to go back and refresh my brain because I know that there's more to it than just what was being stated. Although it's true, there's detail there. And most people don't know this, but the Chinese people or the Asian people were never given the authority or allowed to be naturalized in this country. And for those that probably don't know about this particular part of it, every county that existed at least up into the say 1960s, the counties all had a particular court in its county that originally were district courts. And that's the court that coincides with the original Naturalization Acts from Congress. Those are state courts in the county with common law jurisdiction and seal. And that's where, if you go in there, and I happen to know one very specific, which is the Los Angeles County Superior Court, I think of the name of the courthouse, Stanley Moss Courthouse. If you go in the courtroom, go in the courthouse and go up on the first floor and go down and make a right turn and go to courtroom number 1. The first thing you're going to notice is when you look through the door, if you can get in, that's even better. You're going to be standing in a theater environment. And it's like, what the heck is this about? Well, that's the courtroom where all the naturalizations were taking place up to a certain point when the Fed ultimately took over the whole operation. So this thing has been a takeover from almost from the beginning. And even though there's a lot more details that can be, looked at, it still boils down to one thing. The people right now need to get their head out of their backside and start paying attention to the foundational specifics in our system that have been a part of it since the inception. And there's court cases that follow along with the specific words and phrases that they use. And you need to, without listening to one of us, do your own study, do your research. Because, I can tell you until the cows come home. But until you got it in your head and you're looking at it and you're seeing it for yourself, then that's when you're going to get the insights. And then, of course, you got to be willing to take a step towards some of those things in your life that are rapidly being eliminated. I've given some assignments over the last several years to people, why don't you just make an appointment with your local IRS agent and go in and have a talk with the guy. I'll tell you what to take with you and what the questions to ask, and you might even be surprised if you don't even get a meeting with these people because they're not in business anymore. And there's more than just one example of what I'm telling you, but it's up to each individual to wake up. And these doors of opportunity have been there for quite a while. Most people were afraid. That's the nature of it. And we're coming into a time now where, as these agencies begin to collapse and fall, those that had the opportunities to take that step, it won't be there. And so there'll be another cycle, though. These things come around, and everybody's going to get a chance at raising their own vibrations and their own frequencies and taking the step into the upper worlds where we're all headed anyway. It's just a matter of time. So, as far as geez, what the heck was that? Oh, salty. Oh, that was RJ. Anyway, uh, I don't have much more to say on the subject without getting into the communist planks and all the other things that they've used to suppress our system, even though they were hiding in the background. The few of us that can read those things and go, wow, look at here's where they did a particular element, like the property titles, the schooling, and number three was the big one on there, which would eliminate all forms of inheritance. Uh, what the heck was that about? But once you get your head into some of the constitutional stuff dealing with the right of inheritance and the fact that all the prerogatives of the crown evolved onto the people at the revolution, that's one of the prerogatives. The eldest heir to the throne was at least put in charge of the family's property. What he did with it was still based on a family relationship, and some of the youngerlings during history got beat up over it. I think Thomas Jefferson was one of them, and he tried to eliminate that right of inheritance and the succession of the property and who was put in charge. So it's another one of those probate court things, and the will is no longer looked at as the valid instrument for moving property from one person to another, at least in California. And if you don't have a trust, they don't even want to talk to you. And this whole thing is just totally upside down. Well, all this is going to get fixed. And those of us who have a clue about what the steps are, we're going to be around and helping those, and maybe even helping people who've been in the positions of doing this stuff to understand proper and what they should be doing as opposed to what they've been doing. And like I said, I've said this more than once, karma's a situation that everybody's going to have to deal with sooner or later. And, you may have been a firstborn in a past life and an underling in this life, and vice versa. And sooner or later, those two things cross paths, and you may find out you've been involved in something that you really don't like, and then you find out, well, yeah, because you did that same thing to somebody else in a previous time. And so we're all moving through some very interesting awakenings. And the system that Trump's portraying now is everybody's going to get their due, going to get back all the corrupt um, taxes and licenses and all the other stuff that goes along with that. But we're also going to be experiencing the relationship that we have with our fellow man, and how the actual intent and our integrity, our honesty, all that is going to be worn on your sleeve, and everybody will see it. They'll automatically know, and that's how this thing is moving forward. So that's about what I got to say on that subject. I'll yield as the case may be.
Anybody else got a question?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I was getting ready to ask that. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add to that, or to ask questions about, or just make a statement of how you felt things went this week. Anybody have anything they'd like to say? Don't be shy now if y'all have something to say.
I have
Just
a
unmute.
question.
Yeah, just go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. It's in regards to land patents, and I've been working on my allodial title and my chain of titles back to the land patent. What is the snafu or the snag as to why they will not take you off the tax roll? I heard that it has something to do with the zip code and the Buck Act of 1939. And if that's the case, who is in charge of all of that? Who do I need to give a notice to remove the designation?
May I? Allison, what state do you live on?
Michigan.
Okay. Number one, have all of your documentations for your status correction in play? Are they posted?
Yes, and I've had them recorded.
Pardon?
Yes, and I've had them recorded for a couple years now.
Okay. So your State Department of Natural Resources is the number one place to go to. You need to write a letter that states your agency has errors in its records, and those records need to be corrected. And you also need to send a copy of it to the State Department and the Bureau of Land Management. When you get this letter set up, I highly recommend that you go and file it in the county records in the county that you live in. That way it gets the little ticker thing from a public record. And then when you send your letter out, send it registered mail. Okay. And tell the State Bureau of Land Management, because their records contain errors, so does the local county. Now, your local county is a corporate structure. This has to do with that imitation company that Lincoln brought in. Under Lincoln, every county's corporate charter, every state constitution was amended to accept the business dealing of Lincoln's entity. You can look up the Dun & Bradstreet number of the state of Michigan, and you can look up the Dun & Bradstreet number of your particular county. I'm in the process of establishing that the treasurer, the sheriff, the assessor, all have separate UBI numbers. Unfortunately, you cannot go to the GMEI utility in America to establish this anymore because too many people were hitting it and they reprogrammed the American website. Those of us who still know where to go look have other trapdoors that we can slide into. But know this, under Lincoln, the state of Michigan went bankrupt in 1907. That is the state of Michigan incorporated. And then you need to look at the map for Michigan in 1907 and see just how many counties actually existed on Michigan at that time. So take a look where your located, what town you're in. And be mindful, in 1907, all the borders may look different. If you're able to go back into the census log in that county, if you're lucky enough to have an old family that has lived present in that county, you might find them in the 1800s era censuses. So let's say you've got a family, you know where they lived in 1850, 1840. It may not be in Michigan, but if you go to that particular state, 1850 census, book 7, page 14, line 7 through 15. These are my people. You can overcome any of the post-Civil War arguments. And if you're lucky enough to have had an ancestor that fought in the Colonial War, I know where to go look for that stuff. I'm in possession of my Colonial War ancestors' Colonial War pension number. So the democracy, if you have the records to prove up, don't have a single argument. It's a case of put up and shut up. Like Mason said, the 14th Amendment, all that actually was a corporate bylaw adjustment. And under that adjustment, they just happened to steal the Southern slaves from the local plantation owner and made them corporate property to help pay off the debt that they owed to the King of England. And then that worked so slick, they just applied it to the rest of us by sleight of hand. I yield.
I just have a question. You said to write a letter to the State Department, Natural Resources, and the State Department. Is that the State Department of Michigan or federal? And of course, I know Bureau of Land Management because that's how I got the certified copy of my land patent.
Well, okay, so to that extent, everyone needs to be aware of the Naval Distribution Agency Act of 1864. You can look it up over in England. I happen to know how England's machinery works. So if you go over and look that up in the UK, they brought it over here under Lincoln, and the Secretary of State of the District of Columbia is the head of the ship of state for the foreign pirate ship. And your local Secretary of State is an underling under them. So once your status corrected and you let the Secretary of State of Michigan know there is an American on the land, and he is responsible for notifying all of the underlings across the state to heave to. And the key word to write in your letter is required. You are required to inform everybody statewide an actual documented American is on the land of Michigan. Not the state of Michigan, the land of Michigan. You all need to wrap your head around jurisdiction. The entire machine of the de facto works by admissions and confessions. This is why they spoon-fed your vocabulary to you. They put you in the cattle chute of slavery with your vocabulary, such that you don't know what you don't know, and you have to gain mastery of what you don't know. For many people, it's a daunting task. But this is no time to grow a yellow streak. It's time to get medicated and get a prescription called Grow-A-Set. In other words, don't be fearful. You have everything to gain. And have fun with this, because the folks that have been running this show, they have their butts so far hanging in the wind. If you walk up with a dart, you can't miss. I hope that helps.
Yes, it has. And I have actually sent letters to the Secretary of State. I've defaulted her out, so I sent her a cease and desist. And I also notified my county treasurer, county assessor, my township treasurer and assessor, and the state of Michigan's treasury or treasurer. I've sent them all notices and cease and desist.
Do you know that America has come back under American land law?
No, I didn't.
Effective October 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the United States Incorporated settled a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. On the 5th, American land law was proclaimed. On the 8th, every sheriff of over 3,100 plus counties were notified they are directed to step into their lawful peacekeeping role as a lawful sheriff, not a legal sheriff of the de facto corporate structure, but lawful. And this goes back to Mack and Prinz versus the United States, where the United States Supreme Court came back and said, you sheriffs can uphold the Constitution if you want to. A big, heavy dose of if. That is discretionary. Maybe today, if I feel like it, and maybe tomorrow, next week. Yeah, whenever I get around to it, I can uphold it. That's no longer the case. You are required now to step into this role as a lawful sheriff. Pick up your lawful office as a peacekeeping officer. And if you choose not to, you can step down and resign and prepare to be deported. What a vast majority of the sheriffs don't know is they have been doorknob rattling Pinkerton agents for 160 plus years under a corporate structure, and there are court cases, one of them of which is the Clarefield Doctrine. When any sovereign entity descends to that of a corporate entity, it loses its sovereign immunity, and so do its officers. The actual American government is an unincorporated beastie. What Lincoln smuggled in here is incorporated as all unholy hell. And that means the sheriff prior to the first actually was nothing more than a corporate officer. And he had no state immunity. Only if they step into their actual peacekeeping role will they be recognized having state immunity as the highest peacekeeping officer within their county. And their role as peacekeeping only extends to the border of the county. The moment they put their toe into the next county, hands off. They're just another visiting flunky. So yes, agencies up and down the food chain, many of them are going to flat out disappear with this recent Chevron deference court case, enforcing if it isn't a pre-1860 Congress delegating some form of power and authority, you ain't it. You can't make law, you aren't law, and you're 100% commercially liable. No bond can cover that. That's why a vast majority of the counties have gone to insurance risk pools. And that's a whole nother discussion. Don't be afraid to go put Joe's feet to the fire. Because if you, Allison, have actually filed your paperwork, are you a national of Michigan or are you a state citizen?
State citizen.
Well, I thank you. Congratulations. You have the authority and the capacity and the standing to enforce the Declaration of Independence. You have the authority to put your foot so deep that when you extract it, you might not get your shoe back.
I even have a copy of Mason's sign, actually two of them posted on my land.
Good.
And I also have a PDF if anybody else wants them from other states. My son actually works for a wholesale printer, so that's who actually made them. They're all fluorescent, just like a parking sign.
Well, when you write your letters to the Secretary of State and the Department of Natural Resources, tell them you're not subject to primogeniture or entailments. And that you're willing to enforce it against any SOB to the point of a distress sale. Which means if you go after your hired help, you might just actually own an extra house or car, boat, condo, whatever you can track down. Happy hunting.
I don't have any courts right now that would actually Or like I said, where do we get our remedy? Because our courts are so corrupt.
Well, first of all, they're not your courts. You've got British territorial pirate courts.
Correct. That's what I meant to say.
And the only reason for going in there is under special appearance, one time, to get all matters resolved to the point that you don't ever expect to be invited ever again. Because they have their court case. They have a case bond, a penal bond, and a performance bond. And they're sold on the CREST system, which is the Court Registry Investment System. Should you go back in there under special appearance, you need your own bond. I did that here in Washington for a buddy who is the lawful inheritor of the original land patent. And I can tell you the rest of the court proceedings, once the deputy assistant prosecutor yelled bond, everything was concluded in the matter of 25 seconds. And that deputy prosecutor is no longer within the county, because the county deputy prosecutor had to open up his own checkbook to cover all three of those bonds. And the judge was lividly pissed because she got screwed out of some of the proceeds, because the judge and the prosecutor do some kind of split. Once we know truly how their court system functions, we should be putting the living screws to the attorneys. Right now, there exists a $279 trillion lien against the Communist Bar Association. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to have a private lien on the attorney as well? So girl up. Anything else?
I have a copy of any documentation of that land law that you talked about from October 1st.
Yes, and it's an international proclamation.
Could you share a copy of it?
I will gladly post a copy of it in the Constitution room here in a little while.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions? Well, if not, I'm going to take it down a different lane.
Okay, I was going to say, if anybody does have any questions, just unmute yourself and go right ahead and start talking. And Jim and Mason are both here to answer any of your questions.
Okay, Mason posted a document where the state has absolutely no right to convert a right to a privilege for license. Well, let me add a little perspective to that. How many of you actually drive for a living? I mean, truly drive, where you're on the road for profit, hauling a product, transporting people for hire in a regulated capacity known as commerce. I'm not talking about, hey, sweetheart, want to grab the keys, head to the store. I found out we're short of butter. We need milk and bread for dinner. I'm not talking about sending the wife or the girlfriend to the store, unless you happen to put a shingle on the side and says Gloria's grocery delivery service, whereby you did pay her a fee or hire her to do this. If you didn't do that, you might not actually be driving. If you're not in possession of a manifest, bill of lading, actually have a product in the back of a pickup truck or a paid passenger, you might not be driving. In which case, you might only be behind the wheel of an automobile, not a motor vehicle. Under the Uniform Commercial Code 9-109, you will find in A, a designation of household goods, in B, farm implements, in C, commercial rigs of some form, taxi cab, box truck doing delivery, 60-foot semi-truck. Well, under, I think, 48 CFR 300 through 399 are a whole slew of definitions. And amongst those definitions are exceptions to the rule. The people have an absolute right to the road, as long as you're not engaged in commerce. You can go to the park if you're an American. You can go down to the river. You can go to the movie theater because you're not in a regulated, designated category. You need to make command of your words that you use. And all across America right now, all the police, all the staters are getting reamed and an education upgrade. Because they're finding out that for so long, they've actually had their butt twisting in the wind for 100% commercial liability for overstepping their actual duty and obligation. I myself wrote a letter to the county corporal Pinkerton informing him that his office was used to commit harm against a declarated American. That puts total liability on his shoulders for any and all actions, including the training of his underlings, including the training of the use of the oxymoron known as sovereign citizen. One cannot be the sovereign of the land, yet a citizen subject of the corporation. And those that try to enforce that are saying, in effect, they're the sovereigns enforcing everything against their subject citizens. And that's a bunch of malarkey. So this isn't a time to be fearful. This is a time to be encouraged. Do a little study. Show thyself approved. Come out of her, my people, lest ye be subject to her plagues. All ye oxen freed, come out from wherever you are. Take a deep breath. You might just find out that you live in a brand new country and have a brand new world around you, in which case your perspective might just change a little bit, and you might have cause to bring the corners of your mouth from being down to curling up just a little bit with a little sense of joy. And watch how your worldview and your perspective change. I yield.
A couple of
Anybody
little things
else?
to
Jim?
add.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mason.
Okay. Um, California has got some of the finest case law in the country, and it's also got some of the best evidence that you might find on the subjects of taxing and licensing. And for the vehicle registration, there's 1925 statutes at large, and there's a section in there, in the 412, and they give a very, very succinct definition of the motor vehicle issue, which is commercial activity. But they they do something much different than most of the other states that I've been able to discover. They actually make provisions for the application of an exempt plate for your car, a placard they call it. And this little exemption and the placard was a matter of mandate for the private sector. If you're not driving a taxi cab or a vehicle in commercial activity affecting the public, and there's also a really good definition in Title 18, Section 31 of a motor vehicle. And you're gonna discover, just like Jim said, if you're not doing something that's affecting the public, you're not acting in a commercial capacity, contracting with the public at large, you're private. And this little statute that I'm talking about, Section 412, it not only puts the jurisdiction of issuing the exempt plate in the um, it's the department that regulates taxes. Geez, I'm trying to think of what they call that agency. Anyway, um, they're actually required to issue that plate upon the proper application of a private citizen, private person, however you want to look at that, and it's free. But if you don't get it, if you happen to be somebody that's even in the private sector and you're driving around without this exemption on it, the next part of that statute actually makes it a misdemeanor if the police officer has to stop you to find out if you're actually private or operating in a public capacity. And there's actually a fine that goes with it. So they give you an incentive to go down and apply for this thing. Well, I, for one, have gone more than that, but the applications are not granted anymore. I don't know how many of them they did originally in 1925, but the case that I discovered that had to do that if statute cannot be repealed if it involves a vested right. And this particular statute is vested right all over it because it's our right to liberty in our private capacity. So, and there's oh God, if there's one case, there's 50 on the very topics we're talking about. Thompson versus Smith, and the list just goes on and on and on. But as it comes to this point in our life, uh, most people don't even have a clue what I'm talking about. But the rights to travel is one of the premier primary rights you have. Because if you can't go from one place to another, you're pretty much stuck at home and under guard, if you want to call it that. You try to leave without a license, registration, insurance in your car, depending upon the guy that wants to stop you. You know, you're at the mercy of that particular individual until you do something. So, and there's a lot of remedies here, and we're coming into that stage right now where the state is actually responsible for proper identification for the people. It comes to their property, their person, their vehicles, all these different attributes. It's the state's responsibility because we put them there to protect us from the commercial activities that surround us. That's what the Constitution was all about. And so we're in this particular time. It's about holding the employees accountable for not following the oaths, being of an alien status, and literally having no jurisdiction over our private party, our private person, if you want to use the word. I don't like the word person because it's defined as a mask on on a human. So you're not even identified. So lots of pieces to this thing. Uh, and as Jim said, you guys, you got to get that little yellow stripe that's been up your back as far as dealing with the system because of all the stories you may have heard and all the crimes that supposedly people have been charged with and tried and spent time in jail. Well, this is not the time for that. And we're coming into that complete transition of the energy and a lot of other very high spiritual things that are in the works.
Hey, Mason,
Yeah.
along that line, I would encourage people to ask the officer if they're in being accosted. Is that thing on your chest actually on? Because if you've got all your ducks in a row and he says yes, well, great. For the record, I'm informing you I'm executing a lawful citizen's arrest because you've broken the law. And citizen's arrest is one of those things I would encourage everybody to study because that's how we're going to put everyone's feet to the fire. After a couple of these, I don't have to listen to you because I got a badge. And they get taken down and taken out and their butt thrown into the street. And you have exercised a full lien to the point of executing a distress sale. If you look around, occasionally you'll find a business going out of business with a distress sale behind it. You might want to learn that mechanism. Because when a whole bunch of the people in the county go after their employees and put all their snot-nosed employees in their place and execute distress sale tactics on them, it's good enough for the goose, it's good enough for the gander. Welcome to the dance. I yield.
Well, this is RJax. I have a question. It looks like we all have to take some steps to change our status and take away this citizenship of, I guess it's Bretton, and return ourselves to becoming an American in the state that we were born. Is that correct? We become a state citizen?
Okay, so let me explain how this was achieved. Under Lincoln, there were some switcheroos done. And there's a TV program called Mercy Street. It plays out in this Civil War era where you have sick houses that become known as hospitals. And you have physicians old style black bag, do no harm type physician who's trying to help some character. And some of them actually got fairly decent responses and got, I'll call it, good grades, and were noticed by the military, and the Union Army came along and said, hey, this facility has a really great recognition of helping people, and you, the physician, we want to offer an opportunity to take a test and be recognized as a doctor in the Union Army Medical Corps. You take this little test and we'll give you the rank of captain, and you can wear the uniform. Well, this is acknowledged in Mercy Street, and you get some other backdrop context that's laid out proper, where the nurse or the caregiver came in and whatnot. So when you understand and comprehend history, you can see where you got in your quagmire. So along the way, they started issuing birth certificates to the municipal employees as well as the British territorial employees. The United States of America, Inc. and the United States, Inc. were hired help supposed to be. But under Lincoln, when they brought in this corporate structure, they moved the cheese on us. They hid some stuff. Well, in 1921, they started issuing birth certificates big time to anybody that came along and was breathing. Well, they sold those birth certificates on Wall Street. And that's what created all the funny money of the Roaring '20s in reality. Your birth certificate was put in a bond fund on Wall Street. Your birth certificate was financed with a given sum of money based on what mom and dad did. Mom is usually recorded or recognized as an informant. If dad happened to be a mechanic, it had a lower level. If dad was let's say a doctor, it had a higher value when they funded the birth certificate. Then they created the Social Security program, which was only meant for federal municipal employees. So if you actually did not work for the District of Columbia and drew a federal check, you actually were not eligible for the program. However, they closed one eye, went wink, wink on the other, stuck their hand out and said, you need one of these. So when they fired up the Civilian Conservation Corps, they forced it on everybody in order to get a federal job. The Great Depression was a contrived, orchestrated event. The robber barons who set up the Federal Reserve conspired. Hey, Frank, come Friday afternoon, you need to take your money out of the market. Okay. Well, when they did that, the entire market had no liquidity. So when the stock market books were reconciled over the weekend, oh my God, here comes Black Monday. and the Great Depression was on. Yet the robber barons sat back with their pockets full of cash. And they waited a little while till the common man was hurting, and then they came in and picked up anything and everything for pennies on the dollar. They had intended to repeat the process on it. However, what they did in America in the 29 Depression, they intended to take the whole bloody ass world down in it. But they've been exposed. The 64 global Federal Reserve branch banks have been foreclosed on. The only one that's viable right now is the New York Fed, and it's been rolled into the Treasury. And yes, there is a global joint military operation to reclaim all the stolen gold from everybody. So April 5th of 2024, the American Federations of States issued an international notification that the American government was reissuing gold currency known as the American Federated Dollar. It's based on 1/10 of an ounce. And wherever gold goes, this 1/10 fluctuates in value. Right now, 1/10 of an ounce is approximately $270 US. You're about to see the Tier 1 banks, and you can go online and look up who are the Tier 1 banks. They had a deadline to meet to be Basel III gold and silver asset compliant for liquidity. And those that didn't make the grade are going to disappear. I hope you're not in one of the Tier 3. Under those Tier 1s that didn't make the grade. Because if you are, you might just experience what's known as a bail-in. About 2 weeks ago, those that were in Bank of America found out that they had no savings, no checking, and they were bailed in. You're also going to find out that the American Federation of States brought out a trade bank system. And no one alive today has seen how a trade bank existed or functioned. But in the 1800s, they were very common. In each state of the Union, there is now a state headquartered trade bank. Under the banner of the American States and Nations Trade Bank. It's going to function kind of like a credit union with certain nuances to it. It's actually a prosperity institution. because the contractors have been caught with their pants down around their ankles, owing us, the American people, because of what they did to us, was highly criminal, and they've been called out on it. But when you find out this trade bank exists in your state, you will only be able to access it as a status-corrected American. But once you status correct, and you're on the record actually as an American, some amazing things are going to be made available to you. Right now, it's acknowledged that the American states' assemblies are engaged in a rescue operation to save their fellow man. The U.S. citizen is a debt slave. Come out of her, my people, and partake not of her plagues. Now, when you status correct, you'll also be going into the Lamb's Book of Life. Because as a U.S. citizen, you're going to find out that the U.S. citizen and the citizen of the United States of America, Inc. are dead, fictional entities. And those are in the land of the dead. You, the living people, are the prosperity of the world. We have been spoon-fed so much barnyard bio-waste that it's about to hit the rotary oscillator because everything has been exposed. So, little man with a spick and span, where were you when the stuff hit the fan? Don't be downwind of the fan.
High in transit.
Run! So I hope that encourages you to do something about your existence. Anything else?
Yeah, is there
Is there-
anyone else that has any questions? And anybody, any statements, how about anybody here besides Allison that has changed their status?
I have.
I know you have.
Credit
You
union.
and me both. Who was that? Oh, Betsy Ross.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What about what about credit unions? I've been out of banks for years in 2 different credit unions, but I actually went in and called the other one and asked them if they were Basel III compliant, and they were like clueless, or they weren't going to reveal it. I don't know, one or the other.
Well, credit unions function in a different realm than a bank. So the credit unions work with our national credit. Now, that fictional entity that you have in your pocketbook on the driver's license is a franchise. And when they ask you for ID, you present your franchise document. And that franchise is working with the National Credit because it's the only thing that side of the ledger was allowed to work with. And our founding fathers set that up on purpose. No state shall do anything other than coin gold and silver. But that's not the state of. The state of is a foreign contracting entity. He who creates the thing controls the thing. So the state of created the birth certificate, which you gave to the DMV to get the franchise operator certificate known as a driver's license. And they're in control of it, but they function on the other side of the picket fence in the realm of credit. Well, in 1913, the Federal Reserve exchanged out our silver and issued a Federal Reserve note 1-to-1. They took out something of substance and gave us an IOU debt instrument. We got flim-flammed. This is in part how the $35+ trillion national debt came into existence. The Internal Revenue Service and the IRS are two separate entities that were tasked with reconciling the grand books to this business enterprise, and only one of them kept the receipts. The other guy just kind of thumbed his nose at it and never did a thing, never lifted a pencil. Well, that reconciling is about to transpire through these newfound trade bank prosperity institutions as prepaid credit. Behind your ancestors' back, this Scottish corporation took out labor bonds on everybody. And they slowly converted the British territorial employees and the municipal federal employees into debt slaves by slowly issuing them their birth certificates. And then they went full on tilt nuts in 21 under the Baby Townsend Maternity Act. So your birth certificate is actually a bond. So what is inside that bond? Your entire American birthright. Everything is in it. In something called a usufruct trust. And your relationship to this trust has been concealed. Now, every last one of you have been trained to function multiple ways to Sunday. Butcher, baker, candlestick maker, chief cook, bottle washer, husband, wife, bailier, bailee, authorized representative, donor, donee, trustee, trustor, merchant, mariner, tax collector in the Queen of England's Merchant Mariner Service. However, you have been doing all this stuff, all of your existence, all of your life for free. So how do you feel about that? The movie The Wizard of Oz was actually a disclosure project. The city was Washington, D.C. The yellow brick road was the gold. The wizard behind the curtain was the alien property custodian. Oh, and by the way, the lollipop kids, That was disclosure of human trafficking of children.
Oh,
Now, Dorothy was told it was. Go ahead and ask your question, Betsy.
And so,
You're rubber banding. You need to come up closer to the microphone.
the movie, and I know they always have to.
We didn't understand you.
Anyway, I was just
Repeat yourself, please.
Are you there?
Yep.
I had just made the comment that I had heard that about the Wizard of Oz movie. I had just never heard that about the Lollipop Kids.
Okay.
hear
The
that?
movie Lost with Tom Hanks.
No, Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I know, but the movie Lost with Tom Hanks.
Yeah, what
Okay,
about that?
buddy, you've been gone a long time. They declared you dead. That's in reference to the birth certificate. You've been gone and declared dead, and you have all kinds of paperwork to sign to reclaim your life. There have been so many disclosure projects made that people don't recognize. Now, in the 70s, late 70s and 80s, whatever, you see kids behind or posted to milk cartons.
Correct.
We have over 800,000 missing kids in America alone annually. You want to know why? The number one product produced by planet Earth is a product called adrenochrome.
Adrenochrome. Yeah.
Yep. It's not wheat, it's not steel, it's adrenochrome.
Yeah, I've been down that rabbit hole for a while. I've read a lot on all of that. But yeah, I had never heard that about the Lollipop Kids. That was just my comment.
Okay, so this ties into Executive Order 13818 for the ending of human trafficking. So when we end human trafficking, we end the adrenochrome business, we end smuggling and importation and human slavery and misery.
Yep. Amen. And that, have they taken out all the tunnels? Have they dealt with all of that, or it's still ongoing?
Oh, it's
Yes.
ongoing. There's over 1,800 of those tunnels just in America.
And Ukraine was a hub.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Yeah, with Biden. Yeah, and how much property does Biden have over there? Sorry.
So when you look at Ukraine, the 1990s, 91 Maidan movement is where all of the social structure and institutions of Ukraine were overrun and captured not only by the CIA, but the globalists. And then they took advantage of that Chernobyl nuclear disaster area because it was all cordoned off. It's a great place to put the forbidden.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard that. Wow. Yeah, makes sense. Wow, thank you. Now I've got
Oh.
another rabbit hole to go down.
Well, to add to that rabbit hole, when you look at institutions like Disney, Disney World, the Getty Museum, the Playboy Mansion, and a number of other places scattered across the country, it's all tied together. So as we dismantle one, we dismantle another aspect. An aspect of mankind's misery. And this is a global issue.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
And they've been working on it for a while. Years, right?
Well, here's my thoughts on this. When you look at the old dons of the mafia, if you were to initiate a sting operation back into the 50s and 60s, ponying up next to the Costa Nostra, as a businessman, hey, I got this opportunity. I'd like to show you my hotel or my casino. Well, I'll get to know you, you get to know me, we might do business together. Well, I'm not interested in this or that, but I am interested in this area over here, so I will do business with you. Now, transition from the old dons to this next generation. The sons inherited the operation, got arrogant. And then it transitions into the third generation, and they get really sloppy, really arrogant. Can't touch me. I own this, that. I own the judge. I own the police chief and whatever.
Right.
Well, by that time, certain business entities were well known of who's who and into what. The transition into the great-grandsons at the fourth generation is a perfect time to pull the carpet out from under everybody. And I think that's what's happened.
So exposure's coming. It's already started, I think.
Oh, it's been a drip. What I'm looking for is the day when certain cast of characters from Central Casting come across the stage. By the way,
Yes.
William Shakespeare said all the world's a stage. So who's on stage? Actors.
That's right.
So
That's right.
if Central Casting parades themselves out there, hi, ladies and gentlemen, it's Saturday Night Live, and all of a sudden these fancy silicone masks come off.
Yes. Yeah.
You're going to see so many people have an emotional meltdown. What the hell is happening? It doesn't compute. Well,
yeah. That was the CIA's special weapon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if this declassification and disclosure happens, we're going to see such an upheaval of mental illness reaction. Be gentle with your family members, folks. Be very gentle. No one wants to say I told you so.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah, they think I'm wacko already.
Well, I happen to have good graces. I'm a rock collector, and I openly acknowledge I have rocks in my head. I'm one of these characters after a good Thanksgiving meal. I'm out there in the edge of the driveway in the gravel, kicking over the rocks, going, okay, do I have to undo my belt in order to pick that one up?
And then go back in for pie.
Yep. Oh, it's getting a little dark. Hey, honey, look what followed me home.
Oh, God. Okay, back to status correction. Oh, God. Sorry, the rest of the call.
That's okay. This is all meant to have fun.
Oh, good, because I'm enjoying myself. Oh, good.
Well, we all should be joyous for knowing what is coming.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Oh, I can't wait for, the kids to be totally restored and just get them all healed from just, all this trafficking. I can't, ugh. And the
Well,
adrenochrome.
yeah.
So many people don't know about that. They go, what? I go, no, never mind.
Uh-huh.
They don't, they look at me like I'm wacko. And I go, don't you research anything? Oh, you only watch mainstream media. Okay, I get
Yeah.
it. Now that explains everything.
Well,
I
imagine
have a
having this.
TV. Go ahead.
Betsy, imagine this stage. All these guys and gals walk out and, hey, we have a little secret we need to tell you folks. In the last few years, maybe a decade, some stuff has been going on behind your back. And we need to tell you some of the detail because you really do need to know, but we're not going to tell you the really in-depth stuff. It's just that we've ended the missing kids, we've ended this, that, and we're about to disclose, ta-da!
The truth.
This guy who's been playing this role is actually a Swedish actor.
That's right. Yep. And the other's in Gitmo.
Well, the other one has already been processed. He's compost.
Right, right. You just don't know
And
which
then,
ones are all compost yet. Or I don't.
well, the
Yeah.
Wicked Witch of the West is compost.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so,
Biden. Oh,
yeah.
shouldn't
And
have named
so,
him. Yeah.
we'll be seeing some outlandish strategic moves made to I'll call gaslight certain factions.
Right. Yeah. Yep. It's going to be interesting when truth is revealed. I'm waiting for Mr. O.
Well, the real one's already been processed.
Okay. I heard he was being saved for like the last hurrah. But he's processed. That's good to know.
Well, apparently everyone had body doubles and clones. And
Right.
so they're dealing with the cloned stuff.
Right. Did you hear about the whole thing that was found in Missouri under some caves or something? It was a whole cloning thing.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, special ops found those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, we're in that transition period where thousands of withheld patents are being dropped.
Mm.
You all are about to enter the age of George Jetson.
Oh
Now,
my God, I
think
can't
of
believe
your,
you said that. Go
now
ahead. I'm
think of
sorry.
yourself as living in a 2-mile-an-hour horse-drawn pedestrian society, experiencing the train, and then experiencing the first automobile, and experiencing the so-called trip to the moon,
5G.
all within a decade. That's the kind of time we live in.
$3D to 5D.
Well, that has to do with raising everyone's consciousness, but the planet itself is also evolving. But the technological aspects, if you were to
Okay.
find out that they had hovercraft cars 50 years ago and you weren't privy to know about it. By 1970, gasoline and diesel should have been a museum exhibit. The internal combustion motor is an iconic transition to anti-gravity levitation transportation. Flying cars, teleportation.
Yeah, we won't be flying
Imagine,
in airplanes, right?
right? And I used to work for a major airplane manufacturer up out of Seattle, and I'm glad I exited when I did, because I'm expecting wings to become archaic.
I used to work for a major airline, and I'm glad I went when I got out.
Well,
Glad
you
I
might
got
have,
out when I got out.
yeah. Well, if you were a stewardess at one time, you might have been in something I had touched at one time.
Yeah, 737s,
Oh yeah,
757.
I
Yeah,
touched.
yeah, those doors, boy, those doors. It was like, oof. Yeah.
Yep, I touched everything from a 707 to a 777, the B1B, the B2, Roland, the
Wow.
hydrofoil, and the PHM
Wow.
project.
Wow. You know, I did most 37, 57s. Then they went into Airbus and, then several of those. Actually, 87s I got trained on too, but that's when I was like, time to leave this game. So,
I exited when the 787 uh, was just starting to hit the shop floor for prototype parts.
no, I just, that's another one that has a door problem, the 87s.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I went for bases, went to Philly. I was going to do Europe, and Next month, they shut the whole thing down. No international flying. Then I had to commute. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. This is ridiculous. Now you have to go through two major hubs. You got to go to the mothership down in Dallas or up to Chicago just to get to where you're going to start your trip. No.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
No.
part of that
Two
is the
mergers.
bottlenecking.
Yeah, 2 mergers was enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the bottlenecking of transport so that any of the cabal slime goes through a choke point.
I want to see what happens to the CEOs of these companies. I mean, they just go and they rape one airline, they go to another one, they rape that airline, then they go to another one, and they just keep making the circuit. It's amazing to me, and they get away with it.
Oh, yeah. Well,
it's like, really? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So anyway,
okay.
now I'm going to correct my status.
Well, if you go to the Constitution Room and look upstream, you will find a one-page declaration. Where were you born, Betsy?
Oh, we had this conversation. DC, born in the swamp, grew up in the suburbs.
Okay. That particular document is not posted yet. Where was your father born?
Missouri.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's Missouri.
Oh, you stand corrected.
Right.
So you can adopt Missouri as a state.
And then you said something about going to Kansas and finding out if I had relatives or ancestors from there, and then back to all that, the Civil War, the Colonial War. And I've actually contacted my cousin, but he's in the hospital now. He's the one that's got all the genealogy. And I would not be surprised if he has all that. I wouldn't be surprised. He's been doing it for years, and my father started it years ago. So I think I'm going to finally get to the bottom of it, but I got to get him out of the hospital and send me the stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, and he said, I'm just going to throw it out. Don't throw any of that out. Have your daughter send
that
it.
is a treasure.
I know. And I don't want to call him and say, send it to me, would you please? Like now, oh, I'm sorry you're in the hospital. You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no. So, yeah. And we really have not stayed in touch over the years, and that's part of it too. But it's always when, you know, you have a death in the family or whatever that everybody talks for the next month, you know, which is sad, but that's sort of how it's rolled with our family. So,
well, unfortunately, too many families are in that category.
yeah, it's really sad because they're wonderful people. They are all about family. And I mean, we used to, you know, drive from Maryland to Missouri for the summer vacations, and, you know, vacation Bible school. We'd do the vacations when they had that. And yeah, it was great. Had the farm, and the farm was awesome. Let's go pick the corn.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we're going to have a resurgence of traditional values. The actual word family is going to mean something again.
Yeah. I hope. Yeah.
Yep. In my case, I've got 3 branch of the family. In 1860s, there were 3 brothers. And I am the patriarch of one of the 3 legs. The other leg number 2, he lives in Arkansas, and leg number 3 lives in Texas.
Oh,
so
wow. And you're in Washington?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm a California transplant. That's where I was born, just outside of San Diego.
Okay.
I moved up here when I was 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, yep.
How did you manage in liberal land? Never mind.
Actually, I was kind of that blonde hair, blue eyed, candy bar colored Southern California kid who moved up in the middle of January, found out what snow was about in the land of the pasty white.
Oh, God, right. Unless you're Eastern Washington, then you can get into some of the more conservative parts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But
So
like
you
any
went
other
to
area,
Seattle.
yeah, well, like any area of the country, you have your local slang.
Right.
Well, I had to find out what a mossback was.
What a what?
Mossback is.
A mossback.
Yep, they're a native Washingtonian, and how you can tell them is they have moss growing on the north side of the back.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Well, okay. Don't take me there. Okay, so do you like Washington?
That's why it's called home.
Apparently, you're going to stay there.
So these
See, I
days
want to
I'm
go
on
to
the.
Tennessee. I want to go to
Oh,
Tennessee.
well, I have a buddy that's in Tennessee now,
Yeah. I
and
know
gives.
Nashville's not good.
Well, all of the country is in a flux of change.
Well, that's true. Yeah. I'm in Arizona now.
Okay.
I've been here 40 years, 39, 40 years. Lost count.
Whereabouts? Whereabouts?
Maricopa.
Well, in the late part of January, early February, the Tucson Rock and Gem Mineral Show is coming into
Oh, yeah,
town.
yeah. Yeah.
I might bump into you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely let me know if you're coming this way.
I'm trying.
Are you going to go down there? That's a big show. That's a big show. Right?
Well,
The Tucson one?
I'm a second generation rock collector lapidary, and I happen to be a credentialed gold and silversmith.
Oh, wow. Really? Awesome.
And I picked up the art of gem cutting in 1980 and became a member of the American Gem Cutter Society.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
So, yes, I'm seriously admitting I truly do have rocks in my head.
Okay. I have some in my jewelry box.
So
Maybe I have some in my head too.
So it's been a lovely time but does anybody else have a question pertaining to life, correction, learning of the change of law, their status, life in general?
And this is Arjax again. Yeah, y'all were talking about corporations and stuff, and I'm just wondering what's going to happen to all the corporations. I mean, we have them everywhere, and some of them are so corrupt.
Yes, they certainly are.
Well, it's going to take a mop and bucket, but March 25th of 2022, International Proclamation was put out about coming under the American public law to every corporation on American soil. And that required them to do a lawful conversion of their corporate functions. And that means that major corporation would have to have a board of directors and a stockholder meeting, because my God, we didn't know our corporation was formed under a foreign law. We always intended for it to be an American company, so we're going to have to make an amendment to the corporate bylaws to accept the lawful conversion and coming under what is known as the prudent man standard, which is an entire accounting operational standard.
Hmm.
So yes, that has been worked on.
Is it going to
So
take
that
a lot
was,
of time to get rid of those? I'm
yeah, I
sorry,
was going to
RJ.
say that was back in 22, you said. So are they
Yep.
working on it?
Well, they don't have any choice because the bitch list was taken before the Vatican in 2013, and the Pope at the time goes, yeah, you're right. Every corporation on the planet gets its authority to exist under ecclesiastic law. So under ecclesiastical law, the Roman Curie has absolute oversight, and the Pope oversees that. So in 2013, the Pope signed off something called a motu proprio, giving the world's corporations in all categories notice to correct their operations.
Mm.
Because if they didn't, they would be subject to liquidation. Well, in 2017, he issued his final motu proprio and said, okay, folks, you were warned the first time. Now you need to get your operation within the cat box because your operation stinks. If we have to address you again, you're out of here.
Well, now the Pope is not official anymore, is he, or is he?
Well, the prior Pope took his ecclesiastic office into the grave with him. He did not transfer it. What he allowed to be transferred was the pontiff role, which is the worldly role of administrating the church business structure.
Oh, so he's no longer the Pope in Rome or that facility or whatever. No
Yep.
longer has control over the corporations. Is that what you're saying?
If you've ever heard of the parishes being functionally sole corporate entities, corporation souls, every parish is a corporate structure unto itself with its own assets.
Wow.
Everything has been taken into bankruptcy as a result of no actual Pope. You're going to hear about the Patriarch of the West. It's a very ancient office. Everything's being restructured for a reason.
So why did the Pope have control over the corporations of the U.S.?
Okay.
Was that a hard question?
No, it wasn't a hard question. It goes back in time. So our founding fathers in the 13 colonies won the colonial war are now recognized as independent states. As an independent state, they're actually a miniature nation unto themselves. And as such, they have their own people. You have Marylandians versus Floridians as a country people. Okay? Well, each of the 13 states recognized that the King of England and the Vatican were going to come gunning for them. So they bound their individual international authority together into one body. Okay, and that's called the Federation of States. It functions in the international realm, and it represented America from 1776 to 1781. This body created the rest of the stepping stones of history for the rest of the American government. It also created the Confederation of States, which is a governmental body to be functioning in DC, and that Confederation of States spawned the Federal Republic. Okay? So that was our American contractor presence out there in DC. When we pitched the business deal to the King of England in 1783, that gave rise to the United States. Okay? We also pitched a deal to the Vatican for mail service, and that gave rise to the United States of America, Inc. 2 foreign contractors, one to mow the lawn and one to deliver the mail. However, because Jimmy Carter removed American history from school systems in 76, pretty much anybody under the age of 64 has an improper lay of the land construct because they just left U.S. history in place, and everyone assumed that was American whatever. Well, they also took and removed script writing out of school for a reason. If you don't know how to write it, you pretty much learn or unlearn how to read it, and the Declaration of Independence is written in script. So it becomes an old dusty relic of history that no one pays attention to.
Okay, who did you say took over the mail?
Well, our Continental Congress, the very first contract that they did in the Continental realm was the mail contract with the Universal Postal Union through the Vatican. The UPU.
I don't know why, but I thought that was through Britain. That's where the Admiralty law came. The sea.
Well, that's a different thing.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You see, if you ask the right question in the right manner, you suddenly find out, you get clarity.
Yeah, I'm getting clarity here because I didn't know the Pope had anything to do with the mail system. I don't know why.
Yep. And then in September of a few years back, Trump went before the UPU and renegotiated global postage rates because America was bearing like 90% of the burden for the world. So everyone was required to come up a couple of notches in their contribution of running the gin joint. So that took effect. And the American Post Office is actually out of Philadelphia. It's never been abandoned.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I was thinking it was Great Britain or the UK, wherever, had authority over that, the commerce going through our post office.
Mm-mm. So
never. Okay.
The nature of that whole the nature of that whole postal arrangement is something that has to be reestablished in the hearts and minds of people so that they know how things are to truly function. So when you start reading through Mason's work and you come to this call, You can reconcile what you think you know versus what truly is.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to go back and see what all y'all have, because it was, oh, well, I don't know how long ago, many years, when I found out about all this stuff, and it was a colonel or somebody in one of the military services that was explaining all of this to his troops, and a video was being made, and that's how I found out about all of this to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And Admiralty law was explained, and the post office was explained, and Great Britain was in charge of all of that, I think.
Well, only in some degrees. So this corporation that Lincoln brought over, it was bankrupted in 1907. And so in that bankruptcy, it affected every state entity. It all went bankrupt. All of it. And then they fired up two more entities, US Inc. and USA Inc. And it ran from 1907 to the edge of 1928 when they started the bankruptcy procedure. And in the late 28, early 29, they wink, wink, take your money out of the bank. It's actually going to fall. And then they fired up a couple more entities. So you will find out about the Declaration of Interdependence. This is where the British territorial colluded with the municipal government and played ping pong with us in their court systems. And having created the birth certificate behind our backs, so in the birth certificate, you as the bouncing baby boy or girl existed for like 10 days to 3 weeks as an American. Then when they registered the birth certificate, that name on that document was created under British law. And you were converted from an American to a Brit subject. They probated you, declared you dead on paper, took your American birthright, put it in this usufruct, managed it behind your back, and gave you breadcrumbs.
Yep.
And then in 1937, FDR gathers the whole shebang in D.C. and says, from this day forward, you're going to be running Admiralty law. And there's a difference between English common law and American common law, because in the 1750s under Mansfield, they took equity, common law, and maritime, put it into a blender, turned it on, and they created what they commonly refer to as one law. So if you're not a master of that stuff as either a barrister, lawyer, attorney, you're incompetent in that realm. Because under the probating of everyone's estate, England issued forth the Enfranchisement Act, which allowed the common man to vote. Well, in enfranchisement, the crown took possession of everyone's stuff as collateral, as a loaning base. Well, it worked so good for the queen and the king of the time, they did it to us. And then they rolled it out to the rest of the world.
So when did that all happen that it rolled out to the rest of the world?
Well, when they did it to us, it allowed the Brits to fund what is commonly referred to as the Raj. And that's when the Brits went into India and into Africa.
Mm.
Anything that's known as the Commonwealth. Commonwealth of New Zealand. Commonwealth of Australia.
So the Brits have control of all of those still?
Well, we, the Americans, have started the process of plying their grubby little mitts off of everything.
Okay.
Now, in 1707, Queen Anne stepped off the royal throne onto something known as the seat of the estates. The seat of the estates is where your birth certificate is. So from 1707 to 1783, there was actually no occupation of the royal throne of England. So by the time we enter into negotiations, we were negotiating with a king who had no clothes, actually had no authority to make such a treaty. So there's been a discovery that nearly 3 centuries of things touched by the Crown of England is based on fraud. And that's why Europe is in turmoil.
Hmm.
So when it was pressed against the attorneys, they picked up a new contract with the King of Scotland. And in Scotland, the attorneys in training are known as little devils. How many of you have heard the term "the devil is in the details"?
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Hmm. And I'm sure the people over there have no idea, right? Well, there's probably a portion of people that are doing this, but majority of them probably have no clue, right?
Well, there's the discovery that's going around in the Commonwealth countries that the Queen didn't have the Queen, and one gentleman out of Australia goes, "Bloody hell, then why have I been singing God Save the Queen for like 40 years?"
Yeah.
And many Commonwealth Englishmen, Scotch Welsh, whatever, are discovering this, and they're highly indignant.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow.
So you have England, you have the UK, which is a business entity, and you have Great Britain, which is another business entity. So when Charles took his coronation, he took up the position as Emperor of Great Britain.
So did that make him in charge of all of that?
No, he's an underling of the Pope.
Oh, okay.
Running
I
a
heard he wasn't
municipal.
around, right?
Yeah, he's running a municipal business conglomerate between England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. So at some point in time, I expect to see the stripes start peeling off the Union Jack of England.
Oh,
Mm.
I didn't hear you say Canada. So Canada's not under them anymore?
Oh, Canada is a corporation. Lots of people around the world are finding out they had gained their freedom but weren't told, and as a result of it, they didn't actually stand up their lawful government, and the Brits kind of looked around and go, these guys are clueless, so we'll just have to manage it for them until they wake up. Many of folk have been under bad management.
Right.
That's why everyone needs to pick up a mop and bucket and dose it heavily with Lysol, because we got a lot of sanitizing to do.
Yeah, no kidding. Whew.
Lots of learning to do here, that's for sure.
I'm
Lots of
with
things
you.
that we just need to we need to learn a lot of information that we don't know.
Yes, I
Well,
agree.
start at the 80,000 foot visibility issue. Recognize you've been defrauded. You've been lied to your whole life. You might discover that your preconceived notion of what the world is and your place in it may require a big adjustment.
Yeah.
And go easy on yourself. Because many people have bought into go to college, get a good education, make something of yourself, grab the brass ring, make the world, build your world, grab the
Right.
oyster and the whole 9 yards. Only to
With
find
several
out,
hundred thousands of debt.
well, when you say debt, let
Right.
me paint you a scenario.
I didn't do all
You find out that you're in your last year as a law student.
that. Oh gosh. Yeah.
Yale, Princeton, Pepperdine. And
you
you
wake up.
pass, and all of a sudden you find out that if you went and took the bar, you would be making yourself a foreign citizen subject to deportation action.
Oh wow. Let me ask you this. Is there a difference between a lawyer and an attorney?
Well, a lawyer can become a counselor at law.
Okay.
You have a right to counsel. That's the foundation in American law.
Okay.
But an attorney practices at law, but not in law. So what kind of law does he practice?
Hmm.
This is why the field of law has been specialized from family law, medical law, insurance law, admiralty.
Wow.
And anytime you approach one of these entities, what do they tell you? Well, if you have a problem, go hire an attorney. When you hire an attorney, you self-admit you're not competent to handle your own affairs, number one.
Right.
You put yourself under the English system as a subject, because why would you go to a foreign English court when you're an American? Our American courts have been MIA because we've been mothballed. And like Mason said, they had started moving us out of it, hiding it. So between Lincoln and today, we're going into the 7th generation of affected people. That's why so few actually have gone down the rabbit hole studying this thing called America, trying to plug a battery into it, and we're still kind of looking for the key to turn the jalopy on. Well, the key has been found, the ignition has been rolled over, and it's spitting and sputtering on 1 or 2 cylinders, and we still have to bring the other 4 to 6 online. But it is now awake. Anything else?
Is there anyone that has any questions? Because Betsy Ross and I have been asking a lot of questions, but does anybody else have any questions?
Right.
Please just unmute yourself and join the conversation and ask a question. Because that's what they're here for, is to help guide us and explain what's happened and answer all of our questions. So go ahead. If anybody has any questions, please ask.
I do. Hi, Jim. It's J2911. So I've been doing a lot of, just kind of reading in my spare time about, the living in the private. Like I don't know where I got these. I've just kind of been, grabbing resources here and there, just kind of educating myself. I have a living in the private, educate yourself, ask questions, verify everything, maxims of law. I have a Weiss's concise trustee handbook, a guide to the administration of an express trust under the common law, functioning under the general law merchant. Is there anything else that you would suggest? Because I'm in the real digging phase and really just trying to learn it so that I can, handle my own affairs and that sort of a thing. Is there any other resources, that I can go to read that you can suggest?
The number one thing I would encourage you is to get dictionaries, lots and lots of dictionaries. For instance, Mason talks a bit about the 1828. Well, the Bouvier's 1856 is the last American congressionally approved dictionary, but there are others. There's Radin's and whatnot. If you can grab yourself 5 or 6 different dictionaries, you would do yourself a service.
And these are, is there a way that you can go and maybe post some of these dictionaries and so I can look them up and so I have the correct spellings of them and that sort of a thing?
Yeah, between Mason and I, we can probably kick out 6 different dictionaries in a heartbeat.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I would say just keep your eye on the Constitution room that we're in right now, and that's where they'll probably be posted.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, I've gone through, I've kind of, browsed through some of Jim's documents on his Google Drive and some of Mason's, and I've printed out some good resources and listened to a couple of the videos. But I'm hungry. I want to learn, and I want to read up on it and be pointed in the right direction. So
That's a
that
good place
information would
to
be great.
be. That's a good place to be. You're hungry. You want to learn it.
So as
Jim,
you're learning, you're going to find out that the laws of one state or another have to be in conformity with the Constitution. And in general, when the laws were set up, they may be subtly worded a little bit differently from state to state, but they function in congruence.
An equal
So this
footing
is where the
doctrine.
Uniform Commercial Code comes in.
Mason, you were saying something. What did you say?
There's a thing called the equal footing doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
All the states are required to be created in accordance with the principles that the founders laid out in the Federalist Papers, which is where the majority of your critical information is laid out. There's a few court cases that are also in accordance with the American common law. And I'm not talking about a law that somehow has to do with personal problems with individuals. I'm talking about the common law that applies between sovereigns, not between subjects. And that's where you begin to understand, learn and understand your relationship with your fellow man. If you're awake, if you're paying attention to the things in your life you don't like or don't want to deal with, you're going to get the response from the universe that you have an assignment, and most people don't like to do that because who wants to deal with a corrupt system? But what you may not understand is because of your involvement in this particular time, you most likely have already been through those positions more than one time and having taken part in the very things that now most people are looking down their nose at and not having an understanding of the reason they're doing it is because they've been part of that at some previous lifetime. So this reincarnation thing at some point will come into play. Everybody will give it an opportunity to look at themselves in the cosmic mirror and decide just where they want to go next. And we're looking at a system that is now beginning to evolve out of the many lifetimes of all the people that are coming to this time to be able to live amongst ourselves in a complete and total state of trust. Everybody has integrity. Nobody does anything wrong to affect other people's life, liberty, or property. There's going to be a whole massive change, and everything that you've been led to believe is the only way things can work. So just grab your seatbelts and know you're on a ride, and don't be afraid when something comes to you that appears to be an annoyance or you might be afraid to deal with. And that's where the growth comes. And don't forget the frequency exercises that were laid out in one of the previous calls, because that's your connection to the universe. And all of us are connected there.
Well, I'm glad you chimed in, Mason, because all of that sounds like something that we also need to work on is ourselves and our connection to the universe and to our planet and to each other. So it's all good stuff.
I have another question. I don't know, Mason or Jim. I have always, when I started looking into this, I had always heard about Black's Law Dictionary, but there's several different editions. Is there one that's better to look into, or any feedback on that?
Let me make one comment. Let me make
Okay.
one comment on that.
Okay.
Uh, most people don't get this right away, but if you've read enough case law, if you've spent 30 or 40 years of your life and who knows what else, reading the different opinions of so many different people that have come through our system, you're going to find out that there have been individuals who are of a different mindset than most of us on this call, and their whole function in life was to figure out how to completely and totally control the human race. And that's what they've been up to. And even many of the founders, the people that came here that supposedly were interested in separating themselves from a tyrant, they were also caught up in that particular side of it. And
Oh,
the Catholic Church is pretty horrific.
yeah.
And I'm not saying it's the cause of the problem, but it's definitely one of the issues. So, and when you get to enough, I'll say, insights about the uses of certain words and the principles of our system, you're going to find that there's a lot of definitions that have been either jaded or totally misrepresented by the different people who were involved in writing all these different dictionaries. And the only one I found that is the closest to that not being that way was at Noah Webster's 1828. And unless you get the actual book, you're not going to see the, the preface that Noah Webster wrote in the beginning of that thing. But he had some pretty interesting spiritual revelations long before he wrote that dictionary, and it took him almost 20 years to write it. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
probably one of the premier books that I would recommend. But you're not, if you get it online, you're not going to get all the details that he wrote in the beginning part, the preface and all that. So the hard copy is the best deal. You might also get your hands on the CD or the DVD or whatever you want to call it. At least you can do word searches with that. So that's my
Okay.
opinion, my own personal opinion on the dictionaries. Black's is one of the worst. The
Ah,
Bovier's is marginal. So, you're going to have to, you're either going to have to listen to some of our opinions or you're going to have to do your own due diligence and just go buy one and learn how to read American because it's not the same as English.
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And Betsy,
Yes.
along the way, you're going to stumble into something called parse syntax. We
Parse.
American, yeah, parse syntax. We
Okay.
Americans use plain Jane everyday American English. We never use parse syntax.
Okay.
Parse syntax is privately copyrighted and owned.
Okay. So, or is that a good thing to get, or can you get it, or
Well,
no?
you can get it, but all you're doing is being able to recognize if you're reading something and you suddenly stumble into it. What is this? Looks odd to me. What is it? Oh, it's written in parse syntax. I can
Okay.
flush it.
Okay.
There has been a lot of snares laid for people.
Okay. Got it.
being able to recognize the rabbit hole before you fall into it is another part of the game.
Okay. So that's just something to be aware of and not really take for truth, I'll say.
Well, if you didn't know what parse syntax was and you were reading a document, you might get the wrong impression.
Right. Okay.
And some of these folks have been really good at giving the wrong impression.
Well, it makes you think about how many translations of the Bible there is, right? Goes all the way back to, I mean, I have got from the original Aramaic to the original Greek to, I mean, it just keeps going, right?
Okay, so do you have a Geneva?
No, I wish I did.
Okay.
I put
Do
the
you?
link to that in the room here a couple of weeks ago. I'll see if I can find it.
Well,
Oh, great.
I'll post it again.
Okay.
so the Geneva is written for the land, and the King James was written from the perspective of the sea. Over time, out of ancient antiquity, the Phoenicians, who were seagoing folks, landed in England. This is where the term phony baloney came into existence. The Phoenicians had a lot of odd traditions, and King James was not a very nice creature. So his Bible wasn't a very nice entity or creation.
Mm-hmm.
You can also get that Geneva in a DVD, so you can do word searches. I spend a lot of time crisscrossing back and forth between that one and the King James, and there's so many uh, incorrect definitions and word usages between the two.
Okay. Thank you.
I just
Well,
posted the one that I had a link to in the Constitution room.
Thank
okay.
you.
You're welcome.
Over the
Yeah.
next few days, I think Mason and I will work on posting some dictionaries for you folks.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
I
you.
wish I
I
had
appreciate it.
all day to. Oops, sorry. I wish I had all day to just study this all day nonstop.
Well, the main thing is to get the general concept.
For me, I have to start the paperwork. I mean, I did that GMEI probably 8 years ago, and the pages that came up, and I didn't know if it was because why would I have so many pages, and I was traded so much compared to this other girl that said, well, I only have 6 pages. You must be looking at a wrong number. And I'm saying there's one number in the bottom left corner, and it was thousands. And I thought, well, I wonder if that's because I was born in DC. Would that have anything to do with it? Just a thought.
Yes. Yes.
It does. It does.
Yes.
It does. I knew it. And she told me I was crazy. Another one told me I was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Thank you for that confirmation.
And by the way, I remember there was, and I'm not sure if it's still available online, an 1856 Bovier's. I do have it on my computer, incomplete. So, and I know I downloaded it.
1858, 1856 Bouvier,
1956. Yes,
1856.
yes.
Got it.
Well,
And
right now, I'm holding in my hand
just
a CD that's loaded with Bouvier's 1856, Ballantyne's 1969, and Black's 1 through 9. I will try to get this into a PDF format, and I'll get it posted.
Oh my gosh. Awesome.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Boy, thank you for all that you guys do. We really do appreciate it. It's overwhelming, but it's fascinating at the same time.
It's also
Especially
necessary.
You're absolutely, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's so necessary because we're getting ready to transform. I mean, already like October 1st, the corporation is now gone.
Right.
So where are we? We're kind of in transition. We're not the corporation, and we're not American.
Well,
what are we, RJ?
So yeah, that's what I was asking. And we're kind of like in transition.
Right.
Well, in that transition, when you're able to hear a little detail, like a few days ago, the statewide computing system for the Washington State Office of the Administration of the Courts of Washington crashed. You can't get into any county or appeal court records, website, the Supreme Court. They said it's going to take them 7 to 10 days to reconcile and get it back up.
Wow.
So what do you think it's going to come back up as? What, is it going to have all of the stuff that it was already on there, or is it going to be all different? What's going to be there?
Oh, I'm expecting it. I'm expecting it to have major changes, because up here in Washington, we hit the Washington State Bar Association between the eyes with a 4x4.
Wow. You think that'll go national? I mean, through all the states?
It's going to have to, as each of the states take control of their own law process back to the common law.
Right.
The bar is going to have to come under submission.
Okay.
Here, when we gave the corporate head of the bar notice that every last one of them is a foreigner, we gave them notice they're required to file their FARA form, Foreign Agent Registry Act notice. Now, you would think this would be something that, since the attorneys are part of the King's civilian militia, that makes sense. But everybody that's in the county courthouse has been acting as a foreigner in a foreign capacity, participating in a foreign election, and is a declared Brit. So if you walked into your county courthouse and gave your local treasurer notice, here is your FARA form.
I gotta write that down. It's interesting. I see God putting me in some pretty interesting situations in this town. And
So your town structure, When you say
Right.
the city of is a British territorial business entity.
Okay.
Every county has a British territorial corporate charter and a municipal corporate charter. Well, that municipal corporate charter is now defunct, null, and void. And effective October 1, the territorial went bankrupt and is now null and void. 2 days ago, I'm located about an hour's north of Spokane, Washington, if you got the map out.
Love Spokane. Okay.
Yep. 2 days ago, a buddy and I went to the county building and gave the chair of the county commissioners 7 documents. And I had a little conversation with this gentleman. And I told him the document I'm giving you was already passed out at the commission meeting the day before. And I issued 47 of them so that what you have in your hand is now in the wild, in the hands of the people of Stevens County.
Mm.
I ought to, well, that declaration of land law, the notice to the sheriffs, the notice of change of government, there is a multiple page document for doctors, attorneys, and politicians in it. I ought to post that document in the channel. It's really good pass out material for everyone to give their friends and neighbors.
Mm. And what's it called?
Oh, it's just a document I built. It's a compilation package.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so I ought to post it and let you guys pull it down so that once you go through it, you can then take it into your respective towns and counties and start the awakening process to your neighbors.
Do you think like these city councilmen and judges and all, I mean, do they know all this or are they like just pretending? I mean, I've sort of gotten connected to this justice of the peace, and it's like, so what's the difference between justice of the peace, judge? What's all the difference? I mean, if she's a judge, right?
Okay, so think of jurisdictions. The word law means land, air, and water.
Right.
Those are 3 separate jurisdictions with 3 separate law systems.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You've heard of the law of the land?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the justice of the peace functions in your county and is exercising the law of the land.
Okay.
When our founding fathers built the counties, they isolated and guaranteed the country couldn't be taken over because the counties are a government on the land. They exercise the law of the land. And they have the justice of the peace.
And that's where you're naturalized too, by the way.
Yep. And then you have your law at the state level on the soil as a country in totality. And that's where a justice is at. A justice is not a judge.
Oh, okay.
Okay. A judge is from the legal system In the ancient tradition of the galley, this is where the black robe and the white wig come into play.
All right, I'm with you. Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much ancient history we're not properly taught. I just gloss over, you can look up galley, Galli, and look through history where it comes from. And they took and transformed their role from tax collector and whatever. And the maritime law was brought onto the land. This is why the gold fringe sits around the flag. Now, the flag that we have all grown up with is a certain size, certain shape, and proportion, and it's an Article 4 war jurisdiction flag. That war jurisdiction flag was loaned to the Navy. This is why the rail in the courthouse looks like you're getting onto the deck of a ship, because you're getting onto the deck of a pirate ship from a foreign power.
That's why you don't cross over that gate, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And they always want you to approach the bench. Not going there. Sorry.
Well, you don't go in there unless the bailiff comes up and grabs you on both sides, and then all you have to say is, I protest and I don't consent. And if they drag you over the bar, it's threat, because you got two thugs on you. They're usually armed, so you're under duress.
Wow. Yeah.
Those days are almost history.
I've had dreams about that, by the way, Mason.
And I've lived it with an abatement. And
Wow.
Mr. Scalia, who granted the petition, which was also a writ of error, he got whacked. You know that one. Same time frame. I'm just wondering if they put him under protective custody. I guess that's one of those we'll find out.
Well, protective custody, so no one can ask him for the details. What was this about? Well, it's a little bit after 8, so it's a little bit after 11 Eastern time. So I think we should wrap up the evening.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
One final comment. Remember, all the words that you're going to be looking at in those dictionaries, you have the ability to confirm what their definitions are and whether they're true or not. You have that power. It's in you. Don't forget to ask.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Mason, and thank you everyone who asked questions and participated tonight. That was great that we had so many different opinions and so many different questions. It's great.
Now I'm going to go put on my frequency.
Betsy, thank you. yeah, thank you so much.
I'm going to go put on my frequency tape or whatever and heal my pineal gland.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Great idea. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone, and I just hope that y'all have a blessed night, and just take this one day at a time and learn what you can, and make your decisions, as to where you're going to go, and what you're going to do, and change your status or not. I mean, I think we all need to do it. That's for sure.
Yep. And
Yeah.
as you go through this process, be kind to yourself. Admit you were duped, you were lied to.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
be kind to yourself.
Yep. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. And just look at yourself in the mirror and go, am I a better character today than the character that I see in the mirror was yesterday? If you can say you've taken a positive step to improve the character in the mirror, that's what it's all about.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
don't forget to forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a hard one. Yeah.
And thank the universe for your day. You created it.
Thank you
Yeah.
for the breath of life.
Yes.
So now that you've brought forward your ticket for the roller coaster, sit down, strap up, and enjoy the ride.
The journey.
It's an e-ticket, by the way.
Oh, and it's a unique ticket because not everyone gets this particular ride right now.
That's a fact.
Thank you, Mason.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. Good night, you guys. Signing
Yep.
off.
Good night.
Thank
Be
you,
safe.
everyone.
Enjoy the week. Night night.
Yep. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.